Good evening. Welcome to People, Pets, and Policy, How We Serve Prince George's County, a virtual listening session. Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate everyone for their participation, as well as those watching on our YouTube live stream. My name is Linda Lowe, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for the Department of the Environment. And for tonight's meeting, I will serve as your moderator. I am joined tonight by Andrea Crooms, Director, Michelle Russell, Deputy Director, and David Fisher, Associate Director of the Animal Services Division, all within the Prince George's County Department of the Environment. Tonight, you will have an opportunity to hear an overview and learn more about the Prince George's County Animal Services Facility and Adoption Center. But more importantly, tonight is an opportunity for us to hear from you. I want to repeat that tonight is organized as a listening session. And with that, I will now turn things over to our director, Andrea Crooms, for a brief introduction before David Fisher begins his presentation.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Crooms, and I'm the director of the Department of Environment here in Prince George's County. In case anyone didn't know, because I didn't know until I applied for this job, the Department of Environment houses the Animal Services Division here in the county. Our presentation tonight is about people, pets, and policy, and we really want to talk about how we serve Prince George's County in animal services. Our presentation tonight is going to be split into two parts. Like Linda mentioned, we're going to have a listening session, but first we'll feature David Fisher, our new-ish Associate Director for Animal Services. He's going to spend some time telling you what we do in the division, our approach to dealing with the unprecedented national increase in shelter intakes, outbreaks that have happened in the shelter, and our implementation of the new animal code that was passed in 2019. We passed a new animal code right before the pandemic. And so this is not, we want to make sure that we've had an opportunity to speak to you about it so that you can understand what changes were made in that code and what opportunities that gives us to support people and their pets. We do plan on having future opportunities to share more information. So this will be a pretty high level overview because there is a lot that goes on in this division. Some of the questions and comments that we get tonight will help guide us in what we do in future sessions. I think some folks will, I'm sorry. So after the presentation part, there's going to be an opportunity to hear from you. We are trying to understand how we can best serve the community and understand some of the concerns that have been expressed to us about responsible pet ownership and community members feeling safe or unsafe around others' dogs. This is not a conversation specifically about legislation, but a focus on what we can do better and how we can help and engage with the community to ensure the pets and people, the owners of animals, and those who don't have pets are all able to enjoy the county safely and fairly. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Fisher to tell you more about the Animal Services Division.
Thank you, Director Crooms. Thank you, everybody, for coming on today to go through our presentation and give us an opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Animal Services Division, what we do, how we serve the county. So really the presentation overview today, we're going to get into what does Animal Control do, what services do we provide to the residents, what are the rules for owning a dog in Prince George's County, why is a dog, when is a dog a danger to the community, resident feedback about how to keep the community safe. So really, soliciting that from you guys is the first of many opportunities to do that. So starting off with the structure of animal services. So I already introduced myself, David Fisher, Associate Director for the, oh, sorry, problem with my microphone. Hopefully that's a little bit better there. All right, so David Fisher, I'm the Associate Director for the Department of Environment. I supervise the Animal Services Division. There's two Deputy Associate Directors that work in the division, Dr. Vanessa Lee and Terry Littlejohn. Dr. Vanessa Lee, it works over the animal care, the kenneling operation, placement, volunteer community outreach. And those two people, as you can see here, are Romero Nero and Deja Edwards. And Miss Littlejohn supervises Tanya Roberts and Vicky Weimar, and that is over the animal control operations and also communications. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we're going through as well. Roughly as a total, we have about 80 plus people overall in the division, including some vacancies that we're still in the process of filling right now, and looking at how we structure best to service the community, which we'll get a little bit into as we talk as well. We want to really start off by talking about some of the successes. And I think that this is something that's important that we've been doing with our staff and working on is we can always be better. We can always do better. We can always focus on different ways to service the community, but we are having some successes. And that's a testament to the staff on hand right now and the work they're doing and some adjustments that they are making. And so we just want to hit on a few little things here before we got in. So one is the improvement in our save rate. So in Q1 of 24, we're, as you can see, we're roughly at about 60% for dogs, 69% for cats. And in Q2 of 24, we're at 79% for dogs and 73% for cats. So a 19% increase for dogs and a 5% increase for cats. That is extremely significant and really has to do with the efforts of staff to turn things around, get them out the door, use different methods to get adoptions moving. It's really been great to see them do that. Improve responsiveness. One of the big things we talked about is how are we fielding calls from the public? How often are they waiting? And we've really tried to address that in a way with some of our benchmarks that we're doing, using some of the strategies that have been employed already by 311. And we were at 5 minutes and 27 seconds as our average ring time right now. And that is down to 11 seconds. Our percent of calls answers have gone from 69% to 87%. So we are still making improvements, but these are two very specific areas that show that we really have turned around. The staff have risen to the challenge in answering the phones and turning it around. And partnership success, we were just closed out the Maryland 3000. I'm super proud of our staff. Once again, I know I keep saying that, but honestly, I am. They've just done such an incredible job. I could not believe we did 251 successful adoptions in the month of August. We waived fees. They were doing a great job getting animals out the door. It was really incredible to see. That is a huge number. We're the top performing public shelter in the state of Maryland. Really great. And in that same time, we also successfully returned 76 animals to their owners. So that's just a really amazing number for us to be able to get back out there into the community, into good homes. And lastly, just adjustments in our operations, cross-training between programs and spreading institutional knowledge. What we realized early on is there was a lot of siloing. People were, I'm doing this work, or I'm doing this work. And people really didn't know, okay, well, what am I doing? How do we work best together? So we've been having a lot of more of those conversations, talking through how do we make sure that Animal Services Division is doing the best job we can to serve the animals and the people of Prince George's County by spreading that knowledge across, spreading those relationships we may have out in the community. And that's been really improving. Our shelter, as an addition to all the other shelters really nationwide, but especially in the DMV, I was just on a phone call this week with a few different directors of shelters in the DMV, and we're all seeing a rise in respiratory illness. And many people who are on this call may know that that really affected our facility and how we operate already 3 times this year. And you can see that our disease protocols and how we're dealing with them have just greatly improved. When it hit in January and we had a disease situation, we closed for a month and it was in all 7 of our rooms. When it hit again in April, we closed for 10 days and we had it only in 1 room. And then when just recently in the last couple months, we had an illness again, we didn't have to close it all because our protocols had become so tight that we were able just to isolate that off and still able to serve the public and get those animals out. So although we're still seeing that rise that other people are seeing, you're seeing that improvement over time, which is it's once again a testament to some of the changes we've made in the facility and the staff. And we're trying to be more transparent and have more conversations with our partners. So, holding regular meetings with our rescue partners. We have over 300 individualized emails, and TNR partners all across the county. We're meeting with them on a monthly basis, and continuing to have communication with our volunteers. Absolute. All three of these groups are critical to serving the county and being partners with us, which is really excellent. So what does Animal Services do for the community? So we provide for the health and welfare of the county's animal population through enforcement of the Animal Control Ordinance, a resolution of animal-related disputes, and the promotion of adoptions, licensing, spay, neuter, and humane education. So what does that really break down to? So the basic structure is in three areas. We have our paws on the ground, our placement and kennel section, our paws on the go, communication and animal control officers, and then outside veterinary services. So for us right now, the placement section really is our adoptions, volunteers, fosters, intake, rescues. Our kenneling operation really has to do with the basic health and care of the animals, if that's walking, enrichment, and really the absolute basic things are feeding, trying to get them out, making sure that their kennels are clean, and all the rest of that. That's really the absolute core services. And then really the thing that I think we don't talk about as much, but is also super critical, is the paws in the field, our customer service and dispatch. We have our own customer service line, so it's very similar to 311, where the calls are coming in, and we dispatch our animal control officers ourselves. So if you call up 911 and you talk to them, they turn them over to us. And then our dispatchers are actually the ones who are telling them where to go in the field. And in addition to our animal control officers, some of you may have come across our laborers in the field, which we're actually picking up animal carcasses in various places, whether they've been hit by a car or, whatever that situation is, and getting those off the streets, which is also pretty critical. The outside veterinary service is very important, and it really is broken down in three areas. And it's outside because it's not something that's directly contracted by us. Just recently, we had an excellent job promoted by the county council and the county executive to actually get us a full-time veterinarian here in Animal Services Division. So we're in the process of hiring for that, which is really going to be a game changer for us to be able to bring that in-house. Right now, we are doing all contract veterinary services, whether that's in our building where we're paying people hourly, whether that's sending them out for more serious service, such as x-rays or anything like that, or if they need, a bone set, we have sort of minimal veterinary vetting that we can do inside of the building. And then emergency services, whether that's after hours calls or anything like that. Those are all absolutely critical veterinary services that right now are completely outside of ASD's core operations. So we wanted to get into a little bit of the service by the numbers here and talk through that. And so you can see that overall, as we're going through, we're seeing more calls logged in the last 2 years. You can see this year we're projecting at about 14,700, and it depends. In the summer, we really see an uptick. More ACO activities. We're estimating at about 6,000 ACO activities, up 800 from 2021. And the biggest thing that I really want to point out to people, because this is absolutely critical, is if you look at 2021 and you see the total animals, it's 7,836. And here we're estimating in this year, we're at 9,962. That's more than a 25% increase. That's significant. We have the same resources that we had before. We're serving the community, but the need has grown substantially in a very short period of time, which is very hard for us to be able to adapt to. And during that same time, we're also seeing that adoptions are going down. 2021, 2022, when people are at home, you're seeing 2,900, 3,300 adoptions. And 2023, you're seeing 1,800. This year, we're estimating probably 1,522. We'd probably be a little bit higher than that based on what we saw in the Maryland 3000 and the great work of staff in that particular regard. But overall, I think you're seeing that not only is the intake going up, but the amount of people interested in animals is going down. As a little bit of an anecdotal piece also, which I find very interesting, is the amount of designer dogs that you are now finding in these sort of centers like ours, these public animal services buildings, is skyrocketing. So any sort of animal normally you'd pay maybe $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 for, you can find those now in shelters. And a lot of shelters are experiencing that, unfortunately. So how they're really coming into us. So they're coming in at ASD in our adoption center. They're coming over the counter. Those are owner surrender, owner requested euthanasia. That's an absolute critical service that we provide for the community. We are running roughly, it's about $75 for owner requested euthanasia. And if you're going to a private vet, that number is 4 times, 5 times, 6 times that number. We're picking up strays. We're also doing carcass disposal. So if your animal dies in your home, we are bringing many of those animals are being brought to us for us to dispose of them because people have nowhere else to take them. And then if we can't provide the service or people come after when we're closed, sometimes the animal ends up being released on the premises. So we may come in the morning, there's an animal loose, or somebody comes into the facility and we've just shut down. And instead of waiting till the next day, they just release the animal. It's can be a very tough situation. In the field with the animal control officer, we pick up strays, we do owner surrenders, we do bite cases, 25Bs, cruelties, carcass removals as we're out there as well, you know, picking up all of that. And then other jurisdictions. So there are other jurisdictions within Prince George's County. So those would be incorporated areas which do their own animal control services, or they have officers in that area. They bring animals here sometimes for euthanasia requests or strays or cruelty cases. And this is the place where they end up staying. So once the animal is inside the facility, it's vaccinated appropriately for a shelter environment. We'll give it a health evaluation. And then one of the things we've really done, which is reducing our amount of spread of disease as well, is moving to a room based on the stage in the system or the overall temperament. So we have intake or ACO holding. Those are animals that are on hold. We either have 3-day holds or 5 days hold in those particular areas. And and placement as well. So all available animals inside of the placement area. And right now, if you need an animal, please come see us, especially a dog. We have about 90 dogs in that room right now. And then we have isolation, treatment, or quiet room. Those are the animals that are sick or they're in need of additional care. And then behavior. So I want to be clear about this, that it is very important for us. If an animal has a behavior issue, we do not give up on it immediately. We don't. We put it into that room and we really focus on how can we work with that animal and see, is it possible, can we get that animal, which we've been able to do before, which is so rewarding for us overall, get that animal into a space where, you know what, maybe they just weren't treated well, they're a little bit shy, and they can just be adopted by the public. Or we turn often to our rescue partners, which they've been a great resource for us to be able to take some of those dogs that we say, you know, this dog could really be a great pet for somebody, but it just needs a little bit extra care. And that's just not something we can give in that particular moment. And then the care for the animal. So as I already touched on, the cleaning, the kennel or enclosure, providing food and water, enrichment where appropriate and possible, and administration of medication as prescribed by our contract veterinarian. You know, that's a very critical part for us to make sure that we're helping them get better. We're helping them go into homes in a good state, and the rest of that. And this is an absolute critical thing for not just for us, for the field in general, and also for our staff, is the capacity for care, defining our ability to care for the physical and behavioral needs of the animals in our care in a humane way with the resources at our disposal. This is really critical because what's happening right now in shelters across the United States is everyone is at capacity, and our compassion is also at capacity. And the last thing that we want to do is have any sort of bad outcome for any of the animals that are in our care. And so we're constantly expanding and looking at it. For instance, you may have seen that roughly about, I think it was about a month ago or 6 weeks ago or so, we sent out a plea because we really needed people to come in here and help us because we had 210 dogs in this facility. We have 169 kennels. I think everybody can do that math, right? But we made it work. We made it work because we wanted to provide the best possible care that we could, but we have to constantly balance that with what can we actually provide for these animals that are in our care, in a realistic way that's also not going to push the staff too much where they're also getting burnt out, and it's just affecting everybody on a whole. And then for our placement of the animal, we have some requirements before they leave the facility. Placement approval process, reducing barriers. So really looking at what are the things we need to have. About 6 or 7 years ago, I adopted my dog Hunter. It's been a great dog for us, from this facility. And at that time, they wanted to talk to my landlord and what our backyard was and the fencing and all the rest of that. And it was important and it set us up for success, but it also slowed down the process. And the slower the process is, the more the animals get backed up inside of our facility and the higher our numbers go, going back to our capacity for care. And so we've looked at reducing some of those barriers while also making sure we're keeping up some guardrails, right? We don't want to break everything down so just anybody can take them at any time. So we do some general things where we look at, we say, okay, do we have any record for this person? Do we have any record for this address? Do we have anything that's showing up as a red flag as they're going through that process? So we're keeping some guardrails in place while making sure we're reducing the barriers to getting the animal out of our facility and into a good home. Spay and neuter, because that's really the most effective way for us to reduce the population that we're seeing right now for the appropriate species. Rabies vaccination for dogs, cats, and ferrets, that's also very important. And any critical medical procedure. If we have an animal that's in our care and it needs medical care, we will send it out for that care. Make sure that it's going to be taken care of. The last thing we want to do is say, all right, we picked up this dog, it's got this medical condition, we're sending it back with someone, we're not sure that they're going to take care of it. So we make sure that any critical medical procedure is taken care of. And then the basic avenues for the animal to leave the facility are adoption, foster, rescue. As I said before, we have over 250 partners. Return to owner and release of the wild animal back into the wild. And that is critical. If it's a wild animal, we want to get it as healthy as possible. We do have partners that we work with for wild animals to help them get better so we can release them back into the wild. But we're not adopting out any wild animals here. So that's not going to happen. We do have some farm animals and some livestock that come in from time to time, but we're not messing with the wild animals. So getting a little bit into the law, Prince George's County, and getting into some of the county code. We're not going to go sort of too deep, but touch a little bit on what we're talking about. So animals found at large. If we have animals that are running at large, what we really want to try to do as much as possible is return them in the field. So this is why it's absolutely critical for our public to have the animals microchipped. We scan them for microchips. If we can find out, hey, they live around the corner. A lot of animals, many dogs are found within 1 mile of where they live. So we can return them in the field. We can bring them back to their owner the first time. Now, if we catch them a few more times, then we may need to bring them into the facility just to make sure that we're making sure that owner can truly take care of them in. But we want to reunite them with their owner. We want to reunite them with their forever home they already have. And then bringing them to the facility. Once we bring them into the facility, we do need to make sure we spay, neuter, microchip, license, all of those things. And I know that can be very hard for people sometimes. And we've had a lot of very tough conversations around spay and neuter. But once again, it is really something that's critical. So if there are situations where somebody is, breeding an animal legally and they have all that process and paperwork in place, we can always approach that situation with someone. But for the most part, we really need to stop breeding. We need to stop that happening. Because it's just really, it's really killing us right now. Especially we have a lot of puppies, I can tell you right now, physically in the facility. Proper shelter. So keeping the animal outside, making sure that it's, what is the temperature outside right now? Is it below 32? Is it above 90? Because then even if you have the proper shelter, you cannot keep your animal outside. Are the core needs of the animal being met? Does it have food? Does it have water? Is the shelter appropriate? Is it cool? All of those things. And then making sure the outside hours, so there isn't As long as you have the proper shelter, you're following the right code, you can have that animal outside during the day and during the nighttime hours, as long as you are physically there. But that's the critical part of it, is we don't want to have that animal outside. You're not home. It's been outside for days. It's been left food. It really needs to make sure that it's taken care of. And then in the county overall, just looking at the requirements, we want to have licensing. We want to know who the animals are. We want to have rabies. We want to be safe. We want to make sure people have veterinary care. It's absolutely critical. Take care of these animals. The better shape they're in, the better care our public takes of them, the more we have herd immunity. The animals are coming to the facility in better shape if they end up in that place. And we're in a much better situation here at the facility when we're getting to those places, like I was talking about, where we're 200 plus animals inside the facility. And just briefly touching on the ADA and emotional support animals. So the ADA does speak very specifically to the type of animals you can have, and it's a dog or a miniature horse. And if you're interested in that, you should please read up on that on the ADA. But emotional support animals are not recognized unless it has something to do specifically, once again, tying back to that ADA disability. And so really going in there and saying, all right, how are we using this dog in this particular circumstance, or that miniature horse, and making sure you're tying that back to the law specifically, and that everybody's sticking to that. I wanted to make sure that we really talked about the Animal Control Commission, and it's a lot of what we get back and forth here is, well, ASD is doing this thing, Animal Services Division. So Animal Services Division and the Animal Control Commission are separate from each other, and that's on purpose, right? The Animal Control Commission is a team of commissioners whose mission is to ensure the safety of the community, citizens, and the animals within the county through due process. So it needs to be independent, because we may bring something, or somebody from the community may bring something, and we can give our opinion in the same way. As you know, if we were going to a courtroom, if it was an officer bringing the case, or all the rest of that, but they're really going to decide, how does it tie back into the code and their responsibility, and their core responsibility is to conduct public hearings to determine whether violations have occurred, right? And so they're going to go in and say, all right, we're going to hear from this side, we're going to hear from this side, and we're going to adjudicate this thing overall. And so if you want to make a complaint regarding ongoing situation with a nuisance animal, you can fill out this form. It's linked inside the presentation itself. And then, this is something was absolutely critical as we're going to ACC. And once again, it's something that is not often talked about, is that once a complaint is submitted, you may be required to testify under oath as the complaining witness if this matter proceeds to a hearing. Okay, so that's absolutely critical. Is we do not take anonymous complaints to the ACC. The ACC does not take those. Now, if you call us and you say, hey, our neighbor is doing this, this, and this, and it has to do with something overall that we can enforce, of course, we're going to come out and take a look. We're going to come out and adjudicate that situation as best as we can to mitigate it. So hopefully it doesn't get to this point, but sometimes it may. So what makes an animal dangerous? And I think that this is a really tough question, because it can seem sometimes to be very subjective. So we've put it up here about what is the actual law itself, right? What does the law say? But often what we end up experiencing is the perception versus the reality of the animal is dangerous. And I think that's where we end up in a very tough situation for us with what we're enforcing. Is we may come out and that animal felt like it was very dangerous and it seemed very scary because that animal, whatever size it is, was barking or was following you, or was following you and your child or something like that. And it felt very aggressive. And that's where we're getting into a situation where, okay, it's out for this time. How do we exactly talk about that overall? But what actually legally makes it dangerous is inflicting an injury on a human on private or public property, kills a domestic and or farm animal, or has been previously found to be potentially dangerous because of injury inflicted on a human or an animal, the owner having received a notice. So once again, it's very, very specific here in what we're actually talking about, because a dangerous animal would have to do one of these things without provocation in order to fall into that particular category. So we do still come out. We do still try to work with the community and talk about, hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable with this particular dog, or this dog was at large, or it was in this situation, because we want to prevent this from happening. But this is a legal definition, and it is important because that's ultimately what we're following. If your dog bites another dog or person, so what actually happens? So in this process, the reports of any incidents of bites to Prince George's County Police Department, they are the initial responder. PGPD is the initial responder. PGPD will alert Animal Services Division with a bite report and prompt further investigation, okay? So often we will be the ones who are investigating this. If it's a critical situation, we will be called immediately. We've been called out many times in these critical situations, and we've started our investigation the same day. We will definitely do that. We will remove animals that are deemed dangerous, that kill an animal or have inflicted an injury at level 4 or above on the Dunbar bite scale. Okay, so if you take a look at that online, that's going up to 6, but 6 is actually killing something. So mostly it's like 1 to 5 on the bites that we're experiencing. And if we see something that's at a 4 or above on the Dunbar scale, or we're seeing that something is a little bit off, then we're pulling that animal. But we really want to make sure we're doing that right, because once again, our goal is both to protect the community and to do what's best for each of these animals. And that's absolutely important. All other animals may be quarantined with their owners for 10 days or 4 months, depending on if rabies vaccination of the animal is current. So if it's current, it's 10 days and then 4 months. In most of these cases, if it is involving a human bite, it will be definitively referred to the ACC. And then if it involves an animal bite, then we'll sort of adjudicate what is particular in that situation and move forward. We wanted to give you guys a little bit of what is it actually in the county? What are we seeing as the numbers, right? So we have 1,450 bite cases, right? Between 1,450 bite cases between January of 2019 and July of 24. And these numbers are showing up. Bats are 35%. Cats are 16%, German Shepherds are 7%, and American Pit Bull Terriers are 7%. So even for myself pulling these numbers, and I knew bats were going to be up there, we're very high. That's not to say if you see a bat, it's it's not coming for you, right? That's not what's going to be very common, but it is something that indicates us when we have this much of data is what are the things we're really going to be as worried about it. We're not seeing as many of those that are actual dog bites as a percentage. We want to get into the nuances of an animal breed, of animal services in the breed identification, because this is so hard for us, right? And this is from University of Florida Shelter Medicine Program. And the top responses for this were Labrador Retriever, American Staffordshire Terrier. You can see all those responses there on the left side. And when they actually did the DNA test, it was a Catahoula leopard dog. I mean, if you look at this and you just get an idea, 25% Siberian Husky, right? So those things are not out there. So it can be very tough to figure out what is the breed of this animal? Is it, normally aggressive or normally not aggressive? And how do you deal with it? And once again, we have another one here. So we have Staffordshire Bull Terrier. You can see the responses that are over there on the side. And you sort of look at this animal. Okay, it looks like this particular type. And as you're coming in, you can see, okay, Boxer, Staffordshire Terrier, soft-coated Wheaten Terrier, right? Great Dane. No part of that looks like any sort of Great Dane to me, right? So as we're going out and we're assessing, it can be very tough. And we have one more for you here. So maybe everybody has been spot on, and you're a little bit better than I am on spotting the specific breeds. But, we have, once again, our top responses there. And you look at this dog, you're like, okay, well, it looks like this particular thing. And then you can see Cocker Spaniel, Sheepdog, Chow Chow, Puli. I had to look that one up to see exactly what that was. But it just makes it very hard for us as we're going out in the field and we're responding, is that there's a lot of nuance in what we do that has to do with also specifically with breed identification, and also just generally in the services that we're providing, that as we're going out there, as we're gathering more information, that's really when we're able to say, okay, let's do this situation. And the officers are able to say, I need to talk to my supervisor for a second and make sure that I'm getting this thing right. and we're having multiple conversations so that we're doing, once again, the best that we can to service both the people and the animals of Prince George's County. Okay, we have reached the end of the presentation, so I am going to give it back to the moderator.
All right, thank you, David. Now we will move into the listening portion of this meeting. And before we begin, let me just go over a few additional housekeeping rules, or some housekeeping rules, to keep the meeting smooth for this rest of the evening. Tonight we had 15 speakers that registered. I will call up to 3 names in order in which they are to speak. If you have registered to speak, please make sure your Zoom name reflects the name you used to register for the listening session so you could be identified. This is critical so our team can find your name and unmute you to begin your remarks. When you are called upon, please turn on your camera and you will be allotted 1 minute to make your remarks this evening. Please conclude your remarks when you hear a tone. For those that need closed captioning, it's available on the Zoom platform. To activate the service, please look at your toolbar at the bottom of the screen and click the CC for closed captioning and then select Show Subtitle. Spanish translation services are also available. If you need Spanish translation, look at your toolbar at the bottom of your screen and click the interpretation button and choose the Spanish interpretation channel. And then finally, before we get to the speakers, we want to remind everyone that the topic at hand should remain the county's animal services facility and adoption center, its programs and services. Comments not on this topic or comments which discriminate based on race, gender, religious belief, country of origin, or sexual orientation will be muted. Likewise, political comments on political campaigns will also be muted, as this is not a platform for political campaigns. We ask that all speakers maintain decorum and respect during their comments. So with that, we are now ready to begin allowing our speakers to come up to the virtual platform to provide comment. Again, I will call up to 3 names in the order in which they are to speak. When it is your turn, you will be able to turn on your camera and begin your remarks. Please remember to limit remarks to 1 minute and conclude your remarks again once you hear the tone. I will read the names again. Kate Conroy. Faith Kolazar and Amy Pergowski.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yes.
Okay, I have my camera uncovered, but I don't know why it's not coming on, so that's fine. Okay, I'll keep this very short to 1 minute. I'm just gonna go in order of the 3 bullets that you sent out, Linda. So the first one, what other type of animal services? I would like to see the hours changed. People now have to show up 1 hour before closing, and restrictive hours is definitely a barrier. People need more than 10 minutes to walk through to see those 60 to 90 dogs. That's insufficient amount of time. The dogs in the kennels need to be made more presentable to the public, keeping them clean, keeping the dogs clean. When I'm there on Saturdays, the conditions are pretty poor, and it's kind of embarrassing for people to see them like that. We definitely need more education and counseling prior to adoptions to keep the number of returns low. The second question, animal control programs. You definitely need to do some kind of outreach to the areas where there are abundant strays. I personally track where all the strays are coming from, and there's some really hot spots in the county that need to be addressed. You definitely need more ACOs. I know we're 5 short, but there are still no job postings on the website. Yeah, was that my very last one? Definitely enforce this because it's not happening. And letting stray dogs run loose when ACOs can't get them is not helping the problem. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Faith Kolazar. Can I get started?
Yes.
Great. So I'm actually the adoption supervisor at the Montgomery County Animal Shelter. So I understand a lot of the struggles that Prince George's County is going through right now, as I oversee an adoption center for an open access shelter as well. I wanted to speak mostly about the pit bull ban. I've been noticing how many postings there have been recently about dogs on the euthanasia list, and I would really like to take this opportunity to talk about breed-specific legislation and why it should be repealed and how many lives that can save. Um, Per county code, no person shall own, keep, or harbor a pit bull within the county. This includes Staffordshire Bull Terriers, American Staffordshire Terriers, and American Pit Bull Terrier breed of dogs. As I'm sure a lot of you know, breed evaluations are visual, inconsistent, and cannot be overturned using DNA or other evidence. Like we saw in the examples, it is very hard to tell the breed of a dog. Is that my time or is that someone's phone?
That was your time, but you can continue.
Okay, well, I was just going to say BSL is a waste of taxpayer money, distracts animal control resources from actual problems, and overwhelms shelter resources. Thank you.
Okay. The next set of names would be Nona Lehman, Sarah Cregan, and Rita Ray.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Um, I have been a resident of Prince George's County all of my life. I'm 70 years old. And I really kind of like I don't like the inhumane way of labeling these animals as pit bulls in this county. We're the only county that still does that. And I'm wondering why. I mean, it's not stopping people from having pit bulls. I think they get a bad reputation. I just think it's inhumane when I see these animals being listed on the social media that they, this is their last time, their last day, they're going to be put down. It just seems very sad to me. I'm sorry, my camera isn't working. And I'm wondering if we could, respond to the fact that people need to be held accountable for their animals. I really think a lot of times you're punishing the animal, but you should also, the people who own these animals, they need to have these animals licensed and, vaccinated. And somehow or another, I just think we should kind of throw some of this on the pet owners. I think the county does a very good job. I adopted my dog from Prince George's County, and it's a good dog. I've actually adopted 2 dogs. One lived to be 17 years old. The people that work there are very helpful, very friendly. I just really am against this reading. And I'm wondering, can't the county build another shelter so we're not so overcrowded? I just think that, they got all these little stray pup dogs running around and, you're out of space. I get it. But can't we do something to like add on to what we already have? And that's really about all I have to say. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to speak at this meeting.
Oh, hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, sorry. This is Sarah Pregon and I live in Brentwood. I guess I would say some of the main problems I've gotten is I can't ever get through to the shelter. Like, I basically decided you can't ever call them. You just have to go in if you want to communicate with them. And I was interested in meeting this urgent dog in May, and I went in and they wouldn't let me see him, even though he was on the urgent list, and they were very vague about it, the whole thing. And they even like crossed my name off of an application that I filled out. And then let's see, and they said, oh, he's in isolation. And I said, well, what's going to happen to him? Could he get euthanized? And they're like, oh, well, maybe you can see him sometime, but he's in isolation. It was just very weird. And then someone, like a volunteer, said, he's on the list, go in. So the next day I went in and they let me meet him, and I ended up adopting him and taking him that very day. So I've just had bizarre experiences and unclear communication. So I mean, obviously, I guess, more staff is needed, and cross communication is needed. Anyway, and I'm not going to get into the BSL because I do think that's a problem, and people are eloquently addressing that. So anyway, thank you for letting me talk.
All right, thank you. Rita Ray.
Hi, yes. Good afternoon. I'm having some technical difficulties, I think like some other folks on here where there's 2 separate chat boxes. But I did ask, will this session be posted? So for instance, I have a neighbor who couldn't attend today that I can share a link that she can go back to. And also, will you guys have more of these sessions quarterly, annually, biannually, so other people can attend or stay up to date on the current things that are happening at the shelter? I do agree with Sarah. I've had some pretty bad experiences going to the shelter with miscommunication or saying, oh, you can't see the dog, it's not friendly. But then the next following day, I found out that the dog was actually adopted. And when I've tried to reach back out to speak to supervisors or management, I've kind of been disregarded or pushed away. And of course, as a tax-paying citizen, I immediately was like, this is crazy. Like, we should have some say. And I went to Google to read, and a lot of what I experienced are on Google as the negative reviews. So I was also wondering, what actions is the shelter taking when they're reading reviews on Google or social media such as Facebook to address those things? I see earlier, David, you were reading how the call log has changed, but I'm also like Sarah, I called and got pushed off to the voicemail. And unfortunately, by that time, you want to get pushed to a voicemail and you're trying to save a dog. No one returned your call. I was one of those people that came to the shelter, and was turned away because they said, oh, you're 30 minutes, an hour before closing. And I was like, well, your website says if I made it here before an hour closing, and there was miscommunication on that. And I've also tried to, I think I personally tried calling Andrea and left a voicemail. That was 2 months ago. Unfortunately, that went unheard. So once again, as a taxpayer who wants to help and sees your cries for being overcrowded, it seems like people who are trying to offer advice, helpful advice, not even just to be bashing you guys, we kind of are getting pushed to the side, but you're begging for our help. So it makes it very hard to encourage other taxpayers or even people out of the county to go there. When I drove 45 minutes and that incident where I was told the dog wasn't friendly and then found out the next day they were adopted, that was 45 minutes that as a taxpayer made me a little ticked off and frustrated. So I'm just wondering, with those questions, what hopefully you guys are going to hopefully try to work on and improve, or even ask us more advice or suggestions on what to do, because we're all working together to hopefully make this better. I don't work for you guys, but I'm happy to offer helpful solutions. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next three names will be Melissa Sweezguth, hope I said that right, Pamela Besmer, and Barbara Glick. Melissa Sweezguth, Pamela Besmer, and Barbara Glick.
Hi, thank you so much for having this session. I wanted to ask very quickly, I would love to see the shelter offer more mobile vaccination and chipping clinics, particularly chipping, and I would love to see the county update the laws to require that chipping be part of licensing, and then there could actually be some fine or something you can do when owners abandon their dogs, as my neighbor did, and it was the shelter got a rescue for it, but that's a struggle. I also want to encourage folks to volunteer and foster, and there's a new foster coordinator. Anyone who has been frustrated in the past year by not getting a response, please try again. Jamie's fabulous. I have 4 or 5 fosters at home, had a few more before, so she's wonderful. The volunteer coordinator is wonderful, and we are part of that solution. So I know it can be tough, but Jamie's super responsive via email, and an amazing add to the team. So thank you so much.
Okay. If Pamela Besmer is not available, is Barbara Glick.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I don't know. I don't know how to get my camera on.
If you're on, you're on.
Okay.
We can see you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hi. I have a couple of. Thank you. First of all, I want to show that it's easy for everybody to criticize that the shelter is too crowded and we need more shelters and everything. But the problem is really the humans. The problem is the humans breeding dogs, and it has to stop. It has to stop. I mean, I agree with the breed specific about the pit bulls and some other things that I have mentioned, but something's got to be done to stop the breeding because we are creating the problem. Everybody wants everybody else to rescue all these dogs. We don't have enough people. And I'm tired of people blaming the shelter. They're doing the best they can. I fostered and got a dog adopted through there. And I know what it's like. And we've got to do something about breeding animals. Something's got to be done. And I don't know what you can do about it, but as far as I'm concerned, no animal should be bred. There's no such thing as a purebred dog. They're all inbred. And there should be zero breeding, zero of any dog until there's no dogs in the shelter. And even then I don't believe in it, but that's another discussion. That's one point. The other point is, I really think we should stop using the term euthanasia because this is not euthanasia, this is killing. Euthanasia is a specific definition for the relief of suffering. When you kill a healthy animal, it's not euthanasia. That's making us feel better. It's just called killing. Let's just call it killing because euthanasia is nothing. This is not euthanasia. And it just makes us feel better to use that term. So, I just want to show that I feel for the problem. I know it's a problem all across the country. And until we shut down breeding, I just wish these animals' reproductive systems would shut down because they're all being bred not at their pleasure, but at their guardian's pleasure. It's all for profit. And, that's the problem is breeding. And something's got to be done to stop breeding dogs and cats. Something's got to be done besides just free spay and neuter. I mean, I know that if you get a dog and you find a dog and they're not spayed, you got to return them to the guardian, which is totally ridiculous. No dog should be returned to a guardian without being spayed. Zero. Anyway, sorry I feel so strong, but anyway, I feel for you guys. I know you have a very tough situation. So thank you.
Okay, so we will try to recall 2 speakers that was scheduled. Is Katrin Conroy on? And Pamela Besmer. Okay. It appears that they had to leave the call. Okay. At this time, we did not have any other registrants signed up to provide online.
Miss Lowell, I'm here.
Oh.
It just took a minute when we clicked a panelist, it cut me out.
Okay, good. Okay. Are you Miss Conroy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. There you go. You have the floor.
Hey, thank you. Good evening. While I'm lucky enough to be involved in animal welfare and human support within our county through the Prince George's Pet Unity Project and my role in the ACC, I'm here tonight as a private citizen and member of the Camp Springs Civic Association down in District 8. What we would like to see are more opportunities for the public to be inside and involved in the shelter, even situations if they can't dedicate themselves to a regular volunteer position. We would be asking for special events to meet the animals and engage the public. Educational opportunities for the public, from basics on how to approach a dog to classes for more experienced dog guardians and training. Initial, ongoing, and continuing support for owners in the county is crucial to reducing dump dogs and increasing public safety. We echo the desire for low-cost spay-neuter vaccine, chipping, training, licensing, and education opportunities out in the community and in specific neighborhoods. Mr. Fisher, as you already pointed out, breed ID is hard, and we undoubtedly oppose the breed ban. So when adopting from the shelter, we would ask the shelter consider a pivot from breed-based assignments to more personality-specific assignments. For example, listing couch potato or high energy on the card could give a potential adopter more information than a breed guest listed and help people maybe look at a dog they might not have initially been interested in. We echo that we are frustrated by the overwhelming amount of dogs being bred and sold on Nextdoor and Facebook and other social media, and want you to hear us say that down here at the SCA, we will support any initiative to stop illegal breeding. From an animal control improvement standpoint, every day we see our community members try and do what they can individually to help with wandering dogs and rehomes, etc. Engaging those who are already interested and invested and active in their own neighborhoods could help accelerate safety while you keep working to increase ACO staffing. And we would like to have a community liaison role considered, perhaps someone from the ACO group to work with these citizen groups who are out here. More meetings like this would also be desirable. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, those were all of the registrants that we have. Let's see here, wait a minute. We have I don't see that. Let's see. We will now move on then to we have a question or hand up from a TC Mitchell. Is that correct?
Hi, yes, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know that my question can get answered, but I want to at least say it. So my understanding, I had gone to adopt a dog at PG County, and yeah, it's pretty tough there. It's pretty rough, and the reputation around the state of Maryland is not the greatest for the shelter. But I still really would rather, adopt from that shelter. But my concern is that I was told that some of the dogs, when gets really crowded, they are given to foster families to keep, and they have a relationship. PG County has a relationship with other animal shelters, and I have seen several dogs, go out with these people that foster, which I do appreciate, but I am frustrated because I see the pit bulls or pit bull mixes remain, and we can't even adopt those dogs as PG County residents. And I don't understand why PG County Animal Shelter does not opt to send the pit bulls to the Virginia animal shelters, where they have a better chance to be adopted, because we know this is just a kill shelter. And I also am looking into finding out how to reverse that for our county, and that is really my heart, to have this not be a kill shelter, but to find a better avenue of just sharing the dogs with other counties and other locations, and moving them other places. I'm not an expert at this at all, but it doesn't make sense that so many pit bulls stay in PG County, only in the shelter, only to die there, as opposed to maybe going to Fairfax County or Loudoun County Animal Shelter, somewhere they actually can be adopted by its citizens. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So that concludes all of our registrants who completed the form, who wanted to speak on camera. So at this time, I will bring back our director, Andrea Crooms, to close out the meeting.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so the first thing I really want to do is thank folks for coming. It is, critical to democracy that people come to public meetings. It's time that you could be spending with your families, and I appreciate your willingness to share your input with us. We will be providing follow-up answers to the questions that were asked during the session, because this was a listening session where we were accepting comments. We did not directly answer questions, but we will provide follow-up to those questions. And, also want to thank folks for the positive things that they had to say about the folks who work in the shelter and as our ACOs. These are people who are truly dedicated to their work, and their jobs are not, as many people noted, are not easy. So I appreciate all of your attention tonight, and thank you to my team, at our communications team, the folks who came out to do interpretation, both ASL interpretation and Spanish interpretation. And thank you to Associate Director Fisher for the presentation. And thank you all. Good night.